And welcome everyone to an NABC chat. I'm Andy Katz, pleased to be joined by Pacific head coach Damon Stoudamire. For those out there, of course, you should know that Damon played at Arizona for the late, great Lute Olson in the 90s. Damon, first, let's go back to that era. What was it like to play for Coach Olson during really the height of that program?
You know, it's crazy. It was great. It was great, but it was if you remember, I was kind of trapped in between. So Sean Elliott, Steve Kerr, they go to that Final Four run, and then Coach had a lot of regular season success, but we tend to struggle in postseason. So during that time, and he was always clever and witty with his quotes and the way he would approach the media, in certain regards. And we caught, when I caught Coach, I caught a dude that he was eager. He was still eager to like prove everything wasn't a fluke. He continued to keep the Arizona program going the right way. There was no doubt, Arizona, in a short period of time, he had catapulted it, at that time, other than UNLV, had catapulted it right to the top of the food chain on the West Coast. But I think at that time, what he was fighting for was let's make this thing even national, and let's get relevance all around the country. And that's the guy that I caught during that time when I was at Arizona.
So Midnight Lute, I'm still not sure where that nickname came from, but what was that recruiting process in terms of getting you to go there?
It was great, man. Truthfully, from day one, when Coach started recruiting me, he told me I would always have a scholarship. The problem was at that time, obviously, I wasn't the best student in the world, so I hadn't passed the test. And at that time, Arizona couldn't take non-qualifiers. That's so old schoolish now for all the new jacks that are involved. There's only, it used to be where only a couple schools within a conference probably could even take non-qualifiers. Arizona couldn't take non-qualifiers, so they couldn't take me until I passed the test. I had the core, but I had to pass the test. He stuck with me, through the whole process. And, there were other schools that started recruiting me. And actually, I was all ready to go for Louisville. I was ready to go. I had a great visit down there. I liked the situation, and so, fast forward, I had went through the process, and my mother, she always was a person that was like, you got to call each coach and tell them you're not coming. You know what I mean? You got to call each coach and tell them you're not coming. So I call Tony McAndrews and I tell him that I'm not coming. And, Tony's still giving his last ditch efforts. And, he was like, I'm going to have Coach call you. So I didn't want to talk. I really didn't want to talk to Coach. So, Coach Olson calls me, and, truth be told, in that process of me flipping, he never said anything that he didn't already say. I think what he did was he was the last person I talked to, and it just started to register in my mind that I didn't have to go across the country to get the same thing that I could get from the West Coast. And the one thing that he always preached was family, and he held serve on that promise, through and through. And that's how the process went. We probably talked on the phone that night for 2-3 hours, and then I was like, well, shoot, I'm coming. And then I had to turn around and I had to call Louisville, and I had to tell them that I wasn't coming. And the irony of that is that back then, Arizona wasn't flying private planes and all that stuff. So they, coach was like, gonna send Tony out there. That was Coach McAndrews. He's gonna fly out there first thing in the morning, get that letter of intent, to make sure, that, he secured that and everything. So that's kind of how it went. But it was a unique process. And, funny thing about it is I give a lot, I should give a lot of credit. Quiet as is kept, I should give a lot of credit to at that time, Muggsy Bogues. Coach Olson coached Muggsy in the 86 Worlds. And so he told me when he seen me, he said, "You remind me of your jitterbug," So you got to remember back at that time, it wasn't a whole lot of guards like now you watch TV, it's 100 guards that do the same, that can dribble and do different things. But he was like, "You remind me of Muggsy. You can impact the game with your speed and quickness, X, Y, and Z." And he said, I coached Muggsy in the Worlds, and you remind me of Muggsy. That's what he said.
My dealings with him were always great. And, the word that comes to me is class. He just was, he obviously had the look. I mean, he looked like a gentleman. You could plant him in London. I mean, he just had that look. What comes to your mind when you think about Coach O?
Class, family man of integrity, and I never seen the guy. He looked like $1 million, didn't he? He looked like $1 million. And every room he walked into, it's like he owned the room. His presence was felt. I never seen a lot. For me, even as him being my coach, and I was seeing him every day, I was still kind of in awe of him and who he was. He had so much respect from his peers. He had respect around the campus. I think everybody looked up to him. He was, by the time I got to Tucson, he was Tucson. And I think that, I could, it's amazing. He used to come out for the games, and, when he walked out on the floor, they, the student section, or the band, I should say, they would scream, "Hi, Lute," and then they look over to Bobby and scream, "Hi, Bobby." And, it was just, you had coach it, and, he just, like I said, I never seen a guy command the room the way he did. It didn't matter whether it was kids, adults alike. He was a guy that really just stood out amongst a bunch of great people. He was always the tallest in the room.
Damon, since you became an assistant coach and then a head coach, and I know Coach Olson's health had deteriorated, how much did he counsel you on the coaching profession?
He didn't counsel me on so much coaching because truth be told, we would only touch things that happened in the past when I played at Arizona. But then other than that, we just kind of spent time together talking about family and those things. But he just talked about, pillars that, like I said, family, integrity, doing things the right way. And for me, the biggest thing, like one of the biggest moments as a coach is when we played in San Diego. He came down to the game. He rode over to the game with us on the bus. And after the game for the meal, he came to the post game meal, and coach was in his element when he can talk about basketball. So he held court, and for me, that was like one of the best moments I had in coaching. Honestly, is being a head coach, like him coming down there, watching that game. That was so big. And then for everybody, my assistants, trainers, everybody, players that wanted to stick around, to have him talk about some of their not just me, but just talk about some of their favorite players that they see on television. Like that was good for him. And those were the memories that truthfully I take from the most right now, as I think about, our time together, because that was, as a grown man. And I always say this, like the best part of me and his relationship was that, it didn't stop I quit playing for him. It continued all the way through and through.
Damon, I just want to get your thoughts quickly on the passing of Big John Thompson Jr. from Georgetown, an iconic figure, not just in basketball, but in American sports, a trailblazer, the first black head coach to win a national championship, never shied away from what he believed in, challenged the system. I mean, you could argue we need his voice now more than ever, and it's just sad that we don't have that voice. As I say younger, you're a few years younger than me, but younger in terms of years as a head coach, not younger in your mid-40s. But what did Big John mean to you as a player coming up and now as a head coach?
As a player coming up, he had every kid in the inner city wanting to go to Georgetown. There's no doubt about it. Backstory, I actually met John. My cousin went to Georgetown for 2 years. So John came to Portland, Oregon. Him and Coach Estridge came to Portland, Oregon to recruit my cousin. My cousin ended up going there, and I met John in high school. And let me tell you something, growing up in Northeast Portland, at that time, like without him even knowing, he made us all see that we can reach for the stars by my cousin going there. And then as a coach, as you start to dig into it, right? Because when you're young, you kind of know what the issues are, but you don't really know what the issues are. And one of the biggest things is that as a head coach, he stood for young black men. And I remember him vividly walking off the floor, because it Prop 48, Prop 42,
Yep.
Prop 48, Prop 48. The rule. And I vividly remember him walking off the floor. And you think about at the time when he was doing those particular things, I mean, it was selfless, and it was on behalf of all black student athletes, black coaches, and he was willing to take that hit, okay? And I'll forever, just like every black coach that's come through college, the college ranks, but not even the college rank, even the professional ranks, you'll be ever indebted to guys like him, who was able to put it on the line, and it wasn't all the time about wins and losses. I bet you, if we could go and have a conversation with him, some of his biggest wins was when he lost. Another thing sticks out in my head as a coach, and you take these things, I remember vividly when Fred Brown threw that pass. I was a little kid, okay? It's so much. It's so much going on in the moment, and the only visual you remember is him, hands on Fred's shoulders, talking to him, okay? And then they come back and they win the national championship, and that's the first guy he goes and hugs, okay? So, those are moments that, I bet Fred Brown will never forget that in his life, and I think that those are the things that I take when I seen Big John. He was no different than Coach Olson, larger than life figure. When he came in the room, he commanded the room. The couple times I had have been in his presence, he commanded the room. He commanded the room. Players loved him. No different than seeing all of the world wishes. So he was definitely a larger than life figure that I think, really from a student athlete to now being a head coach, he really impacted my life in that manner.
Well, Damon, I know we all send our condolences to both families. I mean, two iconic legends in our sport passing away within the past week. Damon, I appreciate it. Stay safe, and hopefully we'll see you back on the sidelines here soon.
All right, Andy. Thank you, man. Have a good one.